Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today on your Friday lunchtime. I hope you're comfortable, maybe having a bit of lunch and ready to listen and learn. I'm Rachel Young, as Christina said. Company name is Eat Food Right. I'm a nutrition and health coach. In a previous life, I was a teacher and I worked in business development in the tech sector for years. And then I retrained in nutrition and health. So I come from a kind of variety of career backgrounds, which is always great to have worked in different industries and spaces. So I know what it's like to kind of work through lunch breaks and in busy staff rooms and schools and all that kind of stuff and stresses that come with that. Now, thankfully, I work for myself, so life is different for the better, as it is for a lot of people in relation to lockdown and COVID, working from home, etc. So my approach to weight loss when I work with individuals, so I'll talk a little bit at the end as to how I work with people. I do a lot of corporate talks, which now tend to be through this medium of Zoom. And I also work one-on-one with people as well. So my approach always with people one-on-one working is very individual. And it is also very holistic in relation to nutrition and health for you, for the person, okay? So everybody is different. So the approach that we need to take with every person that I work with is individual. So there's no plan for everybody. There's no 6-week program that fits all. It's all devised around you, the person. So in regards to this talk and weight loss, exactly the same. So I'm going to give my broad holistic tips on that. But this is very individual as well. So, you know, there could be reasons why if someone, for example, that's on today has gained a lot of weight over the last few months and doesn't know why. It could be hormonal, it could be lots of different things, okay? But this is basically a look at, well, what do I think in general human beings need to do in order to maintain a certain weight level for life and to eat healthily and holistically. The theory that I follow on this, I'm not into diets. I don't prescribe a diet. I don't prescribe anything. So one of my tips on this is to actually not think of the word diet. Don't like the word. So I'll start and you'll see exactly what I mean by that. And whilst I'm talking, if anyone, I'd advise there's quite a bit in this. If you want to take some notes, please feel free. Also at the end, I'll give you my contact details if you ever wanted to reach out to me to work one-on-one with me, or just for further information, or for me to do a corporate talk potentially to your company. Get in touch, please. So I'll start. So my top tips for weight loss. Okay, what are they? Right, number one, take your focus off losing weight. Okay, so actually, I had this conversation with Christina before we started. Weight loss for me isn't something that I like to focus on with my clients when I work one-on-one with them. So if I was working with you individually, first question I'll ask you is, how do you feel? Second question I'll ask you is, what were your goals like to be for the period of time that you're going to work with me? 3 goals, okay? So 9 times out of 10, nearly 9.5 times out of 10, everybody will say, I want to lose weight, okay? It's a controversial one though, because a lot of people think that the focus should not be on that, as in, you know, if you're eating healthy, and that's where I sit as well. I like to get people to try and think about nutrition, food is, you know, a good relationship with food, all the benefits that come from eating great food and not avoiding certain foods and the disadvantage that you might think that you might have from not eating those things, if that makes sense, okay? So that's my first thing. Take your focus off losing weight, okay? So even the words like losing weight and weight, I don't like to use it with clients, okay? So measurement of things, I never get them to do, including themselves. I always say that as well. So, you know, weighing scales, measuring tape, all of that stuff, not in my lingo, okay? If people feel that they need to, that's fine. You know, the fitness, MyFitnessPal or Fitbits, things like that, that people have just become so used to thinking those things as normal. I must clock my steps. I must see how many calories I've eaten, blah, blah, blah. I try to take the focus off of that. And I try to get people to eat 3 good meals a day based on good nutrition and portion control, okay? So as I said there, you know, think about what you're gaining, not losing, okay? So it's all about your mindset. If I think of myself as an example, you know, 10 years ago, growing up, you know, not growing up, I was well grown up at that point, but living in Ireland or living in the world 10 years ago, our mindset and our approach to eating food was very, very different, okay? We were all on the bandwagon of how many calories, low fat, low sugar, all of that. That's changed now for the good, thankfully. You know, I've just been into my local farmers market this morning. Everyone is trying to, I think, be more local, eat more organic if they can, eat whole foods, buy local, support local, etc. When you do that, what are you doing? You're buying whole foods in general, okay? So non-processed foods is what we're aiming for here, okay? If you start by changing your mind on how you think about weight and the language you use around it, you will automatically nearly change your stress that comes around that, which is a knock-on effect on your hormones, which also has a knock-on effect on potential weight gain. So we'll talk about that in a second, in a minute. When you focus on needing to improve your nutrition and health, you can control the controllables, and weight loss becomes an added extra to feeling healthier and better overall. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so control the controllables. Your mindset and the way you speak to yourself and the things that you do in your day-to-day in relation to eating food and your approach to food is all within your control. So once you kind of have the knowledge and skills to know what's best for you in that regard, and once you start to action that, weight loss can naturally become something that just happens over time. And that's the right approach, is that it should be a slow, gradual happening over time with a better mindset and a better approach overall to how you eat and enjoy food. So for example, my mindset on food is, as much as I can, I love to cook and prepare for myself because I just love to do that. And I can see the nutrition on my plate and I know exactly what I'm putting into my body, okay? And I know the levels, if I put like a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, for example, on my salad dressing, etc. Equally, I love the experience of eating out. And when I am doing that, my mindset and my approach on that is, it's the whole experience of being in that space, whether it be in someone's home, be in a restaurant, and I am 100% going to enjoy everything that comes my way in that setting, okay? And I won't be thinking about the levels of, you know, good fats, bad fats. Is there more than a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil on this? I'm enjoying that experience. And then I go back to my normal preparing myself for the next day, okay? Key line here, if you are thinking about losing weight, I really like this. There's no healthy weight, there's a healthy person, okay? So, you know, our body mass index, yes, it's a measurement tool of what potentially one should have for, you know, the general medical world to have a good idea as to how our bodies are functioning, but equally that has got no indication as to how your brain and your gut sync and how your body internally is working, okay? So think about being a healthy person rather than losing weight or having a healthy weight. So in that regard in particular, that weighing scales, if you could get rid of it, I try to get people to get rid of it, okay? Personally, I don't know when I last weighed myself. Yeah, so it's something that I don't think, unless for medical reasons you need to be aware of and focus on, it shouldn't be a big focus. 2. So if you've listened to my talks before, you'll have heard this one line from me quite a lot. The more you chew, the better you poo, okay? I haven't got a picture of the Bristol stool chart up today. I normally do. If you want to know what that is, Google it after this. It's literally the health of your bowel movements, okay, of your stool and how it should look. It should look healthy, okay? If it does not look healthy, it's, I think, picture 3 and 4 on the chart. You need to question why. That's a lot to do with foods that you're putting into yourself and the health of your gut, okay? And we all should be going to the bathroom once a day, regular, like clockwork. And if we're not, we should be questioning why we're not, okay? And look at rejigging our food and the level of maybe water that we consume around that as well, okay? What happens when you chew your food? Okay, you digest it better, you're breaking it down. Your stomach does not have teeth. So when we eat food, the first port of call that our food goes through is our mouth, we chew it, then into our stomach, okay? This is literally where it sits. Nothing else happens here. So it sits here and then it gets passed on to our small intestine and large intestine, and that's where all of the absorption, digestion, etc. happens, okay? Stomach is literally a waiting place for the food for 2 hours. So it sits there. If you have swallowed or rushed or grabbed or gobbled down your lunch really quickly and you haven't chewed your food, it's just going to sit there in big bulk form, and it really is hard for that food then to get on to the next places that it needs to go to digest properly, okay? So just be mindful of that. Eat mindfully, chew each mouthful up to 30 times. Okay, what do I mean by that, right? I certainly don't sit at my table and go, have I chewed this mouthful of spinach 30 times? But equally, I'm conscious that when I'm eating my food, as much as when I love food, okay? When I'm in a restaurant and when I'm eating with people, I really like to, go, oh my God, did you taste that? And the mouthful, like the whole experience of eating food and talking about it and whatever. So if I'm eating by myself, I nearly have that conversation going on in my head as well. And if I've cooked it myself as well, I'm kind of having that same conversation too. I'm like, maybe this needs a bit more spice or a bit more fat or whatever it is, okay? So that kind of slows you down as well when you're eating. And I'm going to talk about technology in a minute as well, but all tech, all distractions should be removed from you when you are eating. When we're eating, we should be eating. I like to use an analogy of back in the good old days in January of this year when we were thriving, very busy Dublin city centre. I was walking up Grafton Street on my own lunch break, just having a potter and looking through some shop windows, and I saw a young man with his headset on, phone in hand, lunchbox in hand, what looked like a homemade prepared lunch, walking up Grafton Street, watching a movie, eating his, let's say, a salad out of his lunchbox. And initially I go, well, fair play to him. He's made his own lunch and he's eating it, but he was walking, he was watching a movie, so there's way too much going on there for your body to be able to digest that food. We need to rest to digest properly, okay? So kind of sit with that. The word diet, big one for me. First three letters of it there, what do they spell? Die. Don't like it at all, don't use it with my clients. No one's on a diet. Everyone should be looking at eating healthy and eating well. Eat well to live well, basically. That's another change in mindset again, okay? So be diet agnostic. Our bodies, much like our brains, do not like to be shocked or overwhelmed. So things like dry January, Veganuary, all these things for a month, let's do this, going to detox for a week, I'm going to eat nothing, just drink water. It's not in my remit for people to do, okay? That's a shock to both your brain and your body. Slow and gradual is always way, way better. So if you think potentially dairy, for example, might not agree with you, I would say slow, gradual removal of it. Then once you're off of it, see how you feel, and then you slowly, gradually reintroduce it to see how you feel on that as well, okay? Slow and steady always wins the race. Aim to eat food, not formulations. Huge one. So if you listen to my talks before on labels and stuff like that, look at the back of the packets. If you buy food with packets in it, we try to avoid that, but labels on the front lie. So I've no ingredient labels as examples today to show you, but like if a big one that I show is like an oat and honey bar. It's described as an oat and honey bar. So if you're rushing around the supermarket, you see oat and honey, okay, that's really good for me. Perfect. That's a great thing to have in the morning as I'm rushing out the door, eat my oat and honey bar on the bus, whatever it is. If you look at the label, I think 1% honey, possibly 30-something% sugar. Food is information for your body. It can either help or hinder how you function. It's a huge one, huge, huge, huge one, okay? Particularly when we look at the likes of, caffeine, alcohol, good fats, protein, carbohydrate. We need all of those things in our body, okay? Veg, fruit, like phytonutrients, nutrition, okay? So I get people to look up micro. I'm going to talk around the food plate and portions in a minute, but really we should be looking around our micronutrients. So the macronutrients are proteins, carbs, and fats, okay? So most people have a good idea as to what they are. Proteins can be either a mixed, like dairy or legumes. Pure proteins are your meats. Carbohydrates tend to be your fruit, your veg, your grains, and then your fats, your healthier fats, your oils, your butters, your things like that, okay? They're really good for us, but within those, we've got our micronutrients. So that's what we'll be looking at. Our micronutrients are things like, okay, in your green leafy veg, full of magnesium. Why is that good for us? It's anti-stress, okay? So for example, if you get migraines that you think are brought on by stress, having some kale and spinach for your lunch, which are full of, so they're dark green, full of magnesium, might help to lower that impact on you because you're putting magnesium into your body. So it might help to alleviate the migraine, okay? That's just one example. Again, words around food that, the food industry, the highly processed food industry, I should say, has made us, I suppose, use and think we should believe is things like, food as a treat and a reward. They're words that don't come into my vocabulary either with food. Food is not a treat. Food is essential for us to live. It shouldn't be a reward. Again, it's enjoyment. It should be so much more than a reward, okay? So when someone says to me, I've earned this, you don't have to earn to eat food, okay? Food is something, I don't have it on today, but if you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food is right there as one of the things up at the top that we need to function every day, okay? So it's something that we need to do to ourselves to function well. Eat well to be well. Fill up on fiber, okay? So really looking now from the mindset side of things to, well, what should I eat to maintain a healthy weight, potentially lose weight, and have a good lifestyle approach on that then going forward. Fiber, 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 fiber. Where is it? Okay, it's in veg. Eat the rainbow of them, the more the merrier, okay? Keeps you fuller for longer. Why? There's loads of bulk in it. If you think about it, most fruit and vegetables actually they're highly water dense, okay? If you eat a lot of fruit and veg as well, which I do, you tend to have to kind of drink less water. You're less thirsty because you're getting it from your food sources as well. Use whole grain and brown varieties over white, always if you can. So for example, I love Thai food. If I'm out in a Thai restaurant, I'll always ask for the brown rice. Some of my favorite Thai restaurants now do a brand called, or a strain of grain called riceberry rice. I personally myself buy black rice. So the higher the color that you go in a grain, typically the more nutrition and fiber that is in it. So if we look at bread, if you go from white bread to a very dark rye bread that's got no other grain in it other than rye, there's going to be way more nutrition and fiber in that dark rye than there is in a white sliced pan, for example. Obviously, if you're out, I had a sourdough and white sourdough lunch yesterday with a friend, and it was delicious. And that was, you know, not a once off for me, but I was in a cafe having lunch and that was what was on the menu, and it was yum. Now equally, I know that in sourdough there's added nutrition in that. Why? Because the sourdough bread is fermented, which has added benefits to my gut. Okay, so fermented foods are really good for my gut. Also fermented foods, fermented gluten foods, so sourdough bread, they tend to lower the level of gliadin, which is the protein in gluten. So if you think that you are slightly gluten intolerant, sourdough varieties of wheat are a good option for you. They can help with digestion. Okay. Focus on adding, not avoiding foods in your meals. Okay, huge one for me. So I'd never say to people, like when I'm working with someone, I'll look at a food diary, we'll look at lists of food that potentially they might want to eat, etc. It's adding, all adding, adding, adding. So I look at your food diary and straight away I'll know what I want to omit from that and get you to avoid potentially. But I won't use those words around it. I won't even look at, okay, you eat 6 packets of crisps for a day, as an example. There'll be no talk of you're not going to eat those anymore. There'll be a talk of, okay, as your snacks now, we're going to have rice cakes with some peanut butter or whatever it is, okay? So it's always adding good nutrition to your food. Again, that's mindset. Think what nutrition is in this for me at every meal. This approach will naturally and gradually allow you to consume less processed foods and refined sugars, always. So, you know, if you actually mindfully sit down at your table 3 times a day to eat your meal, you are way more likely to be looking at that plate and every forkful you put in go, okay, this carrot's really yum, you know, or whatever it is, rather than if you're grabbing a lunch on the street to go from somewhere and it's before a meeting and blah, 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 you know, you run into M&S just as an example and you buy a pre-made packaged sandwich that you're kind of not even really thinking about what is in this, you know? So if you just even think about that, I mean, huge difference when you're sitting eating at a table from a plate rather than plastic packet, okay? Prioritize portion control over counting calories, huge one for me. So I'm going to show you an example of good food plate in a second. So what do I mean by portion control? Okay, so typically I will say to people, we're looking at a fist size of carbohydrates, palm size of your protein, tablespoon of your fat if it's an oil, or a small handful if it's nuts and seeds, and then the rest of your plate should be filled, or bowl should be filled up with your veg. Huge amount of veg always. And when we're talking about veg as well, typically, you know, the green, less starchier variety are lower in the carbs. So stocking up and eating loads of them are, I'm not going to say better for you, but less kind of sugar carb side. Whereas your starchy veg, like your potatoes, your root veg, your parsnips, your carrots, all of those things, depending on how they're cooked, they have higher levels of sugar in them, and therefore higher carbohydrates. Okay, eat until you're 80% full. This is one that I struggle with myself. Okay, I went to boarding school. I come from a big family, and you just kept on eating because maybe someone else was going to take that food and you wouldn't get any more tomorrow. And that mindset is still in my head. Okay, so be very aware of your level of fullness, you know, and different foods will make us fuller quicker as well, depending on what we're eating. So try to, like a lot of the nations around the world who tend to live the longest, have this approach. They don't sit at the table and eating and, you know, having more platefuls. They try to leave room for the next meal, if that makes sense. Focus on eating good quality foods and not large quantities of highly refined food. Huge one. Calories are not king and all calories are not equal. Another huge one, okay? So take the shift off calories. If you're calorie counting, I'd advise you and urge you to not. Yes, it's great to be aware of calories and things, but equally, it should not be the determinant as to why we do or do not eat a food, okay? All calories definitely are not equal. So if we compare the calories in a plate of broccoli to the calories in a plate of cookies, zero comparison, okay? Eat a variety of foods. Why? It's the spice of life and your gut loves it. Your gut microbiome, what's that? This is your gut bacteria, okay, which is where 80% of our immunity lives. It loves to be nurtured by a diversity of whole foods to flourish, okay? So it does not like, you know, if you're the type of person that is like, okay, in order for me to lose weight and to try and be, you know, eating healthy, I just need to eat these 15 foods every week. You know, your gut and your brain and your body will be at a disadvantage for that, okay? So variety is the spice of life. You know, try new foods, mix up your recipes, you know, add in things that you like. Food does not have to be in your home and for you. If you ever look at me on Instagram and all that, I'm really big about providing people with information on, you know, not using recipes, you know, try mix it up yourself, okay? Add in different spices to your tastings and all that kind of stuff. The healthier gut, the healthier the person. So up to 80% of our immunity lives in our gut. Drink fluids, eat food. Okay, big one again for me. Why? Because when we break foods down into a mushed or liquid state, the levels of sugar in them generally tends to increase. And it also tends to increase as well when they are cooked, depending, it can be different, but your starch veg, for example, so a cooked carrot, generally, if you think about it, a raw carrot versus eating a cooked carrot, what's the difference? Sweeter, okay? So the sugars in a cooked carrot have increased. Sugars in a raw carrot are less. That's not the case though for things like your green leafy veg. Sometimes when they are cooked just a little bit, the phytonutrients within those can increase more. Okay, eating and chewing veg and fruit brings a multitude of benefits. I've said that already, that the juice counterparts do not, okay? The nutrition we get from raw, cooked, juiced and whole fruit and veg are very different. Eat food at your meals and drink water around them. So when we're eating, we should be looking at just eating, okay? And when we are drinking, we should be looking at just drinking. Now, I always have a bit of a premise on that one, in that if you're out and you're enjoying a glass of wine or some form of other alcoholic drink with your meal, absolutely drink it with your meal. That's that experience, okay? But equally, if you're drinking water, usually I would say to people half an hour away from your meal, so half an hour before and half an hour after. It just means that when we're eating, we can do more of the chewing and the digestion of just the food, okay, and not drinking as well. Sleep well. So this is on the other side of things. So again, weight loss is not just dependent on your foods, it is also dependent on your lifestyle management as well, your stress and your hormones. Sleep is your superpower. What do I mean by that? Okay, literally it's free. We all have the same access to it. Take full advantage of it and prioritize it. It's really important for everybody. Have a good evening routine in place that helps you to unwind and disconnect before going to bed. So if you joined my sleep talk with Iconic a few weeks ago, I would have gone into lots of detail about that. But yeah, it's really important that you have a good, healthy sleep routine down. Aim to disconnect from technology 90 minutes before your bedtime, okay? So I would say to people, you know, if you're starting off at the moment and you have your phone in your bed right up until the minute you turn your light off, so start less than 90 minutes, start 30 minutes, and build it up to 90. Get to a point of, personally what I do now, airplane mode goes on about 90 minutes, if I can, 2 hours before I go to bed, and it's brilliant because it's another step, and I also remove it from the room that I'm in. So that's 2 more steps for me to try to get back into my app. So I need to walk to the other room where the phone is. I need to switch it from airplane mode back to getting internet and phone reception. And then I need to also look onto my apps, okay? Stress less. So fight or flight mode, this is, our parasympathetic nervous state to our sympathetic nervous state, okay? When that's on and there's no line inside, it makes it hard for our bodies and hormones to regulate correctly. So what do I mean by this? Again, not to be getting too much into stress today. So basically, our sympathetic nervous state is our stress state. In general, people now to be running off of this 80% of the time, and we should only be running off of it 20% of the time. So we need to flip that. How can we flip that? One example is deep breathing, okay? So to take a breath in, hold it for take a breath in, hold it for 7 and breathe out for 8. Do that 3 times can help to reset your nervous system back from sympathetic into parasympathetic. This can affect your stress levels can affect your appetite, your absorption, and your assimilation. Why? Cortisol, it's our stress hormone. The higher our cortisol levels, in general, the more hangry we are, if you're familiar with that phrase, okay? So basically your stress hormone increases cortisol, you become hangry because your cortisol increases, you're stressed, you're wanting food, you're wanting, in particular, carbohydrate-based foods, okay? So it affects our appetite, we want more absorption, and basically when we're stressed, like I was giving the example in the analogy of someone walking up Grafton Street doing 3 things at once, their absorption and assimilation of that food that they're eating is nowhere near 100%. What does that mean? Okay, so they're not absorbing it into their cells correctly and therefore assimilating it. What does that mean? Using it, okay? Having the tools and management techniques in place to deal with your stressors in your environment can help to combat the impact stress has on your body. Huge one. So know what they are. Manage your own stress. Distract yourself from eating again after meals. Really big one. So if we're at the table eating, which hopefully we all should be, like if you're eating out in a restaurant, what do you do when you finish eating food and your experience is over? You leave the table, you've removed, okay? So the thoughts of you eating more because you're removed from that space and that environment is less, okay? Eat at meal times, 3 meals a day, and then change your view, okay? So use the office desk as an example. If you are back working in an office space at the moment, or even if you're working from home, remove yourself from that space that you work in. Go to the table to eat, etc. Or if you're working and eating from the one table, your dining room table, even just switch chairs, okay? When the meal is finished, move yourself away and think about another task to focus on. So for example, if it's dinner in the evening and you finish and most evenings at the moment, you're not going to your usual social outlets or whatever, have something else within your space to do, whether it be, reading a book, ironing, whatever it is, another distraction, taking a bath, okay? Get organized and have a plan of action, huge one, okay? So, all roads can lead nowhere unless you have a plan and vision for the future. You've got to see it, feel it, and believe it. So if you are trying to lose weight, have that image there that this is achievable for you and what does it look like? Your nutrition and health has to be prioritized. So a big one for me when I work with people one-on-one is, we need a plan in place. What's your plan for the week ahead going to look like in relation to your food? What are you going to eat? To achieve that, if you find it hard to do so at the moment, you need to get organized, have a plan and schedule it. Just like people, really at the moment between working from home, if you are working, Zoom calls, all that jazz. I've heard stories of people like having 9, 10, 12 of those a day, literally not having 10 minutes to be able to take a lunch break. Well, those calls, all of that have been scheduled into your day. Equally, you need to take the time to schedule in eating and looking after yourself, okay? It's all about self-care. Fats back, baby, fats back. What do I mean about that? Okay, healthy fats, unfortunately, got a bad rep for way too long. What are healthy fats? They tend to be ones that are omega-3, omega-6 high. Not so much omega-6 because we get those from some refined foods as well. Omega-3, so like your fatty fish, your nuts and your seeds, your walnuts, things like that, full of good omegas. Extra virgin olive oil, okay? Our brain is 80% fat, and each cell in our body is covered by a membrane of fat. Without feeding ourselves good fat in the correct proportions, we are not protecting our brain and our cell health. If we do not eat healthy fats, we cannot protect ourselves and brains to the best ability. And also fat keeps us fullest for longer when it's included as part of our meal. And it's also where a lot of nutrition and flavor is. So if you compare me using my example of eating out versus a salad for myself at home. So if I'm doing a salad for myself at home and I'm adding in balsamic vinegar and extra virgin olive oil as an example, I'll typically put in a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil for me, just for one person. When I'm in a restaurant, again, I'm not aware of the amounts that go into that, but I can tell you that their food generally is going to be way tastier than mine. Why? They use a lot more fat in the cooking of it, okay? That's a once a week, twice a week experience, so I'm going to enjoy that. Most importantly, I've just said it, enjoy eating your food, okay? Back to the mindfulness. So much more comes from eating food than the sum of its parts. Eat for the taste. That is why we choose to eat food first and foremost. It's our taste buds, okay? Experience, pleasure, hunger, curiosity, information, enjoyment, connection with people, huge one for me, communication, love, growth, healing, and repair. Food brings all of that to you, okay? Your relationship with food and yourself are the most important relationships you will ever have. Huge believer in that, okay? Love to eat, love food, eat well, be well, and live well. Okay, feed yourself well. So just a little bit now, 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to throw it open to questions. So what do I mean? Again, you'll have seen most of my tips there are based on mindset and your approach to eating food. So what do I think is good foods to eat? Okay, whole foods, literally whole foods. Okay, so not too much, unrefined whole foods, fiber, resistant starches. What are these? These are cold fibrous foods. So for example, if you take cold dark grain of rice, cold potatoes, cold sweet potatoes, cold pastas, whole grain pastas, don't reheat them, have them in your lunch the next day, they become more fibrous. So the fiber that was already in them now becomes even more resistant to being digested. So we don't digest fiber, they keep us fuller for longer, okay? Prebiotics, garlic, ginger, leeks, artichokes, fermented foods, full of good stuff for our gut. So our gut is where our probiotics live. We're going to feed them with prebiotics. Intermittent fasting, what is this? Basically, it's just taking a break from eating, a 12-hour window from taking a break from eating, minimum. You can build it up slightly if you want, but on a general rule, I say to people, if you finish your dinner at 8 in the evening, you should be looking at potentially not having your breakfast until 8 the next morning. It's just giving your body a window to reset all of its hormones, etc., and to not be working on digesting. So this is all the healthy stuff, what it should look like. Lots of color. There's the healthy eating plate that I talked about. This is Harvard's one. So we're looking at whole grains, proteins, veg, fruit. Canada, so unlike Ireland, where we still have the good old food pyramid that's a little bit old and dated, Canada go with this lovely plate of your veg, your grains, and your proteins, and water is the drink of choice. This is my favorite one because it breaks it down even more into your micronutrients, etc. So this is the Lines for Natural Health one. Lifestyle management, so we're nearly there now. So again, weight loss can also be dependent on stress, hormones, etc. So that's all about your lifestyle management, sleep as well, we've talked a little bit about. So listen to your body in that regard, okay? If you think something doesn't agree with you, if you're tired and you had intended on exercising on that hour, you know, listen to your body. If you don't think your body is up for that, then don't do it. Avoid extremes, like I said, the January and all that. Eat mindfully, rest and digest. Sleep well, stress less. The analogy I like to use is the win analogy. So what's important now? Try to be in the now as much as we can. So when you're sitting and having your lunch, think about, oh, the delicious food that you're eating, rather than what do I need to do tomorrow, okay? Manage your anxiety to the best of your ability and exercise. Here's my details. If anyone would like to get in touch in relation to working with me one-on-one or some other corporate talks, any questions around any of this, there's my mobile number, email, and you will also get all of this on my website at eatfoodright.ie.